Today on True Patriot Love, we're going to delve into the negotiations of CUSMA. And today I have Jim Lang with me. Welcome,
Hello.
Jim.
Hey, Paul.
So this has been a controversial conversation that has not just started, in the last 2 years, Jim. This has gone on for decades.
Yeah, to the 1980s.
Yeah, 1984 was, I think, when NAFTA started, right? That was the signing of NAFTA, right?
Yeah, so free trade, it was originally called free trade with Reagan-Mulroney and Ronald Reagan, and they were shaking hands and singing When Irish Eyes Are Smiling, and people in Canada were quite upset with the whole concept of free trade. And then lo and behold, John Chrétien and Bill Clinton in 94 finalized the evolution of free trade, which is NAFTA.
Well, yeah, and let's talk about personalities a little bit, and that's what I wanted to kind of, this is show 1 out of 2 or 3 that we're going to do on CUSMA, and I really wanted to focus a little bit of this show on the history of how it started. So that's great. Ronald Reagan, right? Film actor, did 50 movies. Was the
Governor of
California, right? Got shot by Hinckley in 81 or whatever it was. He was quite a character, and I think there's so many stories. After he got shot and they rushed him to the hospital, he looked up and he said to the surgeon, I hope you're Republican. Yeah. Right? So the guy had a really good sense of humor. And Reagan-Mulroney, equal sense of humor.
Very much so.
People, the Cadillac candidate, they used to call him. So, the idea of free trade and NAFTA really originated, first of all, with Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan had a number of policies that did really well for the U.S. and hurt the U.S. So Reaganomics, right? Reaganomics.
Still talked about to this day.
Still talked about to this day, but left consequences, high deficits, wage inequalities. There were some things about Reaganomics that weren't so pretty, but he was in a tough time, right? The world was seeing crazy inflation and interest and all these things happening, and he needed to react to probably unprecedented waters, right? But he did truthfully believe that free trade between Mexico, Canada, and the United States was the way to go, and he was a champion of it until he passed away. And I got to tell you, it's a funny thing. The thing I remember the most about Ronald Reagan, because living in the States for years, they used to tell this crazy story about how he loved slippers.
Yes.
Right?
You see photos of an Air Force One in slippers.
In slippers. He went to do a national defense speech. When he sits in the Oval Office behind the desk, and they shot down by accident on him, and he was wearing bunny slippers. Right? So, again, true characters. But, those were the characters that actually had the vision to create this and to figure out that as North Americans, we needed to work together, right? And,
real quick, I mean, for people who don't realize it, towards the end of Jimmy Carter's administration in the late 70s, the American economy was in very, very tough shape. Then you had the Iran hostage scandal. Yeah. So their morale, post-Vietnam War, all these Americans held hostage in Tehran. The economy's in a shambles. As you alluded to, the interest rates are skyrocketing. It was really, really rough times.
Yeah.
And Reagan basically grabbed the country by the bootstraps and found a way to turn things around, was trying to find ways to get things built, to get the economy going, to make money move back and forth for the betterment of the United States.
Yeah, win one for the Gipper, right?
Right.
And the Dutchman comes and off the economy goes again.
Oh, and it did a 180.
Yeah.
Like he invested the money when no one would with Lee Iacocca and Chrysler. They invent the K car and the minivan, and it saved Chrysler. It saved all those manufacturing jobs in Detroit and Windsor.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Well, and I don't want to leave Mulroney out because, Mulroney takes a little bit of a weird, how do I say it? He has a weird part of our history. And I think that's probably the way he went out of government.
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't a great, the end of his career was not so great in the fact that, the hotel room and, Fred Dissett and the bag of 300,000 and the autobus scandal, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of dwarfs kind of his legacy a little bit. But I think, quite frankly, people forget, he was a true champion of NAFTA and free trade.
Absolutely.
He was the one. And the signing, you mentioned to me Chrétien, who came right after. So,
yeah,
it's interesting because Mulroney did a lot of the heavy lifting on it. And then, GST, I think GST was the killer for him.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, GST was
still here.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember Chrétien saying he was going to get rid of it. All these years later, it's still here.
Yeah, it is. But, interesting, because that was the thing that was the nail in the coffin politically, and then the side scandals that happened after. But, did a yeoman's task to get us to where we are today and where we have been. And, so then Chrétien and Bill Clinton, who you mentioned earlier, right? Step up, and the Mexican president, I'm trying to think who it is, it'll come to me in a minute, but
it was before Maduro, I think, correct?
Salinas.
Yes, correct.
Salinas. So
correct.
They step up, and they sit down, and there was a negotiation between, it was Mulroney and Bush and Salinas, who did 14 months of heavy lifting on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
laid the foundation.
And then Clinton came in, and Clinton's big thing on this one, from my memory, was environment and labor rights. Yes. So where he was kind of offside with Bush. Bush, I think we all remember Bush Senior, right? Because Bush Senior, war hero, pilot, Second World War,
former head of the CIA,
millionaire by the age of 40.
Yeah.
In those days, millionaire was a lot.
Yeah,
and he was kind of one of the few millionaires that people knew, and very successful guy, right?
Yeah.
He made a lot of money, and quite frankly, financed his own real run for the Oval Office, right? So he did a lot of heavy lifting, and then he went out. Bill Clinton comes in, and it was interesting. So we talked about this before the show. Bush going out, you have Mulroney going out, you have Chrétien come in, and thank goodness at that time, which is a very interesting time in the world, that Chrétien and Clinton got along so well.
Polar opposites, but tight friends, loved the golf together, and were really good together doing business. They may not run in the same social circles and have the same likes and dislikes in a lot of ways, but when it came down to sitting in a boardroom to do business, they were quite good together. Yeah.
You said polar. It's interesting because now you have, a gentleman who's Bill Clinton. So I'm going to go sideways for a minute, but I met Bill Clinton years ago.
You did?
I did.
While he was president?
No, he was not president anymore.
Okay.
But he was at the Preakness in Baltimore.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah. So, and I was throwing a party at the Preakness, and I had a bunch of governors coming to this party because they all want to come to the Preakness. So they're coming to this party, and the table that was sitting across the way from me was a bunch of celebrities and rock stars.
Mm-hmm.
So the first rock star who walks in is Bon Jovi.
Oh, okay.
Right. So
big names.
Remember, this is the clubhouse, at Pimlico.
Yeah.
And they're having, pretty nice wine, champagne. This is a big event for those of you who haven't been to a Triple Crown race. The second leg is pretty wild.
It's 5-star all the way.
Yeah, and it's 75 to 100,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
They just zoom in on this one location. They throw a race. There's an infield party. There's tents. We're in the nicest dining room in this place.
Wow.
And so, I'm hosting this table of people, and we're having, drinks and everything. Bon Jovi walks in. All the ladies in the room, pss, 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 pss,
oh, I know.
They're whispering. They're all excited. Bon Jovi's there. But Bon Jovi's a pretty laid back guy. He goes and sits down and starts to chat with his table. Bill Clinton walks in. The room goes crazy.
He was very popular.
Well, and the funny thing is, so, Bon Jovi, of course, a rock star, doesn't do the rounds, but Bill Clinton actually went and spoke to everyone in the room. And I can't say that I've been tongue-tied too many times in my life.
But you were.
I was. When he came up. You
were.
The charisma of this guy was so overwhelming that, it took me a minute to get on my feet. But, he's just like... he looks into your eyes. He talks. A true politician.
Well, remember the famous quote? He would go, "I feel your pain."
Yes.
With the accent. You believed it.
Oh, you loved him, right? And I was lucky enough, and after that, to it was a project that we had going with the company I was with. I went and stayed for a month in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, his old stomping ground.
Yeah, met him again. Yeah. Met him again in a more casual setting in Little Rock. And same thing, like just the room just buzzed, right? So it's an interesting, because Chrétien, the other day when he was sitting with Harper and getting, that they were having the conversation,
it was fantastic
about Canada. It was so nice to see. But you really realize the struggles of people.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman, French Canadian, he was paralyzed on one side. He started off, did so well, his background, became prime minister, and went on to befriend, at that time, Bill Clinton, no matter, forget his Monica, forget all the stuff about Epstein, he eclipsed all of that and still is probably one of the most popular presidents in the U.S. history. Like, people still today, now
but I think I would agree with you, Paul. However, the revelations of the Epstein files is tarnishing his image and legacy.
Yeah.
It is.
It is.
It is. I mean, to go there that many times, it is tarnishing. I will say this about Jean Chrétien, who was the little guy from Shawinigan. He is still very respected on Parliament Hill amongst all political parties, and his voice and presence still carries a lot of weight in Canadian politics. Well, it doesn't have the baggage of a Bill Clinton.
Oh yeah, no, definitely no comparison. I agree, but it's interesting, and to Chrétien, we've talked about it on previous shows. Having that ability, which we, coming from Calgary, we talked about the other day. A leader has to have the ability to just walk among the common people. Just get out and have a conversation and listen and talk. And, both of those guys did,
big time.
Both of them did. They could look you in the eye. They could have a conversation with everyone. I'm at the Preakness. I'm a Canadian. He doesn't have to walk around the room, and he doesn't have to care who I am.
Yeah.
But he took the time to meet everyone. And there's probably 400 people in that room.
Yeah.
And he took the time to meet everyone. So, those guys, back to NAFTA, they went ahead. Now, from 1993 to 2015, NAFTA created over $1 trillion of trade.
Everyone was happy.
Everyone was happy.
Making money.
You were mentioning about the trucks. Tell the story about because for the younger people, they probably don't remember the trucks with the symbol.
Yeah. So after everything happened with NAFTA, when you would do a road trip in Canada, United States, you would see tractor trailers, and they all had the 3 flags: Canada, USA, Mexico, doing trade from Guadalajara all the way up to Oshawa.
Yeah.
Auto parts, food, agriculture, whatever it was. I mean, it was big money, big business, logistics, freight forwarding, on and on and on.
Yep. But, and it's interesting. So then 2017 comes.
Yeah.
Trump gets in. It's the worst deal ever. Remember that?
Of course.
Yeah. And right away.
He didn't do it.
Well, he didn't do it. And, he did, I guess a little bit, he did say in previous years that it was. So quite frankly, for years, he had talked through the Obama years that he hated NAFTA, right? And he just hated it. He didn't want to do it. So right away, tariffs on steel and aluminum, lumber, and then we do counter tariffs, right? Now, okay, so personalities, right? So we're looking at Justin Trudeau.
Yes.
Right. So he's in power at that time. They don't get along. They don't like each other. They don't have they
could not be more opposite.
They couldn't be more opposite. Quite had no interest in spending any time together. I know at some points Trudeau tried to go down and break bread and have
in Florida, in Mar-a-Lago. Right?
No, before that. Before that, he actually, I think in 2017, I think he reached out to Trump's daughter. And actually,
Ivanka?
Yes. And tried to actually connect. He tried to get a relationship, I think, with her, who was more kind of his cup of tea.
Yes.
Right. And basically try to make it in through to Trump. And so that was kind of what he was trying to do to kind of form a relationship. But, gone were the days of two guys just getting together and having dinner. You look at the personalities, and I really wanted to focus on that because this is really a lot personality driven. And you look at these two guys, they got together, whether it be Chrétien and Clinton, the Mexican president always kind of on the sidelines a little bit, quite frankly, language barriers and, never always have their own issues. But they got together and now we get to this era and we have, you don't see them golfing together. You don't see them spending any time together. They just didn't hit it.
As we found out that Donald Trump would rather hang out with Vladimir Putin than Justin Trudeau. Donald Trump would rather hang out with all these other people because we've discovered that Donald Trump is not a reasonable man to negotiate with. You mentioned off the air and mentioned earlier that Donald Trump came up in the really rough 70s and 80s of development and building, dealing with the unions. It's always attack. You're never wrong. And you're always on the offensive, and you're always trying to get something over on the next person in a deal. Whereas if you think about Chrétien and Clinton, they were trying to win, but also they were smart enough to realize it's okay if the other person has a victory as well, as long as the deal gets done at the end.
Yeah.
But Trump has never figured that out.
No, well, it's not his negotiating style. And quite frankly, he's also, we've talked about it on previous shows. He's also in an environment right now in the U.S. where they're struggling, right? They don't talk about it. He wants to rah, 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 they're doing well. When he came into office, huge deficits, no manufacturing, productivity at its lowest. He did have, quite frankly, his huge drug problems. There are a number of social issues. There were a lot of things going on.
Sure. So why not do a deal that benefits America and maybe benefits Canada, Mexico, and other countries, and quit being such a jerk about it?
No,
but he can't help himself.
No, he can't help himself. But, it's interesting. So we go forward and we look at this and we say, okay, now we're here. Yeah. He said personality's not jiving. He even, quite frankly, when he addresses our prime minister, he calls him by his first name.
Governor
Mark, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's not gonna, he's decided, and regardless, he's a good guy. I don't know what that really means half the time. He makes quips about, different gender issues. He's really always kind of poking him a little, as you can tell. It's not it's a little bit of an offset relationship. So they get to this point, and we're coming up to July. So now we're coming up to July, and we're going to be negotiating CUSMA, right? Trump said, I don't really need to. Technically, he doesn't. It's a 16-year agreement, right? And basically was ratified in 2020. It goes to 2036. It's a 6-year review is what we're into. He can just walk away. So there's no consequences to walking away. You could walk away at any time during the agreement with 6 months notice. So really.
But at what cost to America? The American economy already is showing some dents and bruises. We're seeing many stories about same problems here. Young Americans can't buy a home, jobs, manufacturing. So if he does this, Paul, he's not thinking about the long-term effects on the average American worker and the average American family and the American economy. And Carney, to his credit, love him or hate him, he is seeing what's happening. He's probably seeing what's coming up the highway, and he's cutting deals with other countries to keep some money flowing in and out of our country.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. I'm hoping, we're all hoping that keeps going, and quite frankly, there's no roadblock from the Trump camp, right? But you look at this and you have to say personalities again, because when CUSMA comes into play and all these terms are being negotiated, we send, of course, Freeland.
Chrystia Freeland, right?
Right. She goes over and she's negotiating this. Trump and his group despise the lady, right? He even says when she's leaving, he's even doing tweets about her leaving, how good it is they finally gotten rid of her when she resigns, right? And goes to the Ukraine, which is another bizarre, thing to get into. But the personality is just not working, right? So there's a lot of baggage in this one. And quite frankly, he's already said he's gone. So, you have, again, in this end of this kind of era when this is going on, you have Trudeau, who and Freeland, who are exiting, now giving it to Carney. it's just an interesting dynamic of personalities. And Trudeau at the time, probably not focused. Trudeau, quite frankly, the last 4 years of Trudeau's was scandal after scandal, whether it be SNC Lavalin, the India pictures, Chinese interference, COVID, Emergencies Act. It's just one thing after another going sideways. Quite frankly, probably didn't have a lot of time, just was managing the portfolio at the end.
And Paul, here's Carney coming in, who has spent the last 4 decades doing what? Big deals, big business, negotiating, managing banks, managing multi-trillion-dollar portfolios. As a Canadian, I have better faith that Carney can negotiate some kind of deal, because at the end of the day, Justin Trudeau did not have that background. He did not have the background of sitting in boardrooms with big business, the elite business people, and cutting deals. That wasn't his background.
But that, honestly, a little bit of that, it's the personalities of the day and the negotiation. Learned it many years ago dealing with great negotiators. Great negotiators leave the table, hopefully with everyone feeling like they got something, right?
Which is what you said Clinton and Chrétien used to do.
Trump didn't feel that, you know what I mean? Like, there's personal animosity there with Trudeau, and there was personal with Freeland. I think those tweets and everything he's writing, there wasn't a lot of love when he left. And quite frankly, even the Mexican president at that time, Enrique Nieto, there was some dissension, uncomfortable moments there, and he led to some odd times in that relationship. So they got to CUSMA, but CUSMA was muddy, right? CUSMA was muddy from the beginning. And it was muddy since the Clinton days, right? They were always worried about, quite frankly, Mexico and their low labor and their low costs. They constantly, whether it be automotive or steel or whatever, they wanted the composition of the products not to be made somewhere else and shipped through those countries. So they didn't want China shipping things to Canada and into the U.S. They were very cautious and worried that was happening, right? And, whether it be steel, whether it be aluminum, whether it be cars, or car parts, they were always very cautious, the U.S., when it came to CUSMA and even back to NAFTA, because they were concerned. And a lot of that agreement, it's 500 pages long, so I didn't want to go through all of it. But, a lot of the agreement really is just a suspicion of where things originate. So the ports, where they're built, how they're coming out, what their content is. And in order to make them tariff-free, they have to originate in Canada or originate in the U.S., and the content has to be so much. So you could see that as we were going through it. And supply management didn't help us at all.
But I understand what you're saying, Paul, but here's the dichotomy to all of this. Meanwhile, millions of Americans go to their local store and buy Nikes built in Vietnam. Millions of Americans, if I can get my Nikes for $50, great. I don't care where they're built.
Right.
I need some running shoes. If you have this much money to spend and you need to buy certain things, sometimes you have to live the basic surviving, shoes on your feet, food on the table, roof over your head.
Right.
And I understand what the government and the administration and negotiators are trying to do everything for the country. But there's also the reality of the lack of money for a lot of people. The average person in North America is trying to do more with less and less money, and it's a real struggle.
Oh no, I get it, and in both countries. So
absolutely,
it's not, and in Mexico, and I think all three countries are feeling the inflation push, right?
And that's the other thing hanging over the negotiators is that inflation, that cost of living now is the number one concern for Canadians in all the polling. Number one concern more than anything is, can I afford to do things? Can I buy these things? Because it's getting harder and harder every month.
Yeah. Well, and that's what the polling's telling us, right? But they all go hand in hand. So what's going to happen here with CUSMA, what's going to happen is going to dictate that. So we were talking before, and it's interesting, and this is a challenge that I think, Trump's going to bring to the table at some point. He can bring all the manufacturing back. He can bring it out of Mexico. He can bring it back out of Canada. He can make autos only in the U.S. But what does a car cost at that point?
Well, I mean, the U.S. Auto Union's not going to allow the workers to be paid $2.50 an hour.
Right. So
that's not happening.
So what does that translate to the people in the U.S., right? And so that's some of the issues he's going to see. They haven't come up against that yet because it's not done yet, right? We're still in the old format. We're still moving cars 7 or 8 times across borders. There are, we put a tariff on, they put a tariff on. We kind of counter tariffs for a while, then we drop tariffs, and then we go back and forth, right? So that's
real quick. This has been going on, the Auto Act, since 1965.
Oh, of course.
Sure. There are a way that maybe you can tweak it, streamline it, make it more efficient, but still make it in such a way that vehicles are made. That's one of the hardest things now. You try finding a new vehicle in this country under $35,000. It's very, very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And I drive by car lots all the time, and it's filled with new cars that people simply can't afford to buy. And the interest rates don't help, and the economy doesn't help. So if those prices start going up, how will the manufacturers actually sell anything to people?
It'll go back for a while. I think it'll go back to the used car market like it was. Remember when we were younger, right?
Yeah, everyone had a used car.
Everyone had a used car. Now no one has a used car. Well, people still have used cars, but there's less. And quite frankly, there's more cars sold. So, I was looking the other day. We buy around 1.9 million cars a year in Canada. So those are kind of the new car market. The U.S. is around 13 million. Mm-hmm. China is the lead, buyer of around 31 million. So you look at it, is there going to be a market for Canada on its own?
On its own, I don't think that. No, we have to partner with somebody.
Right.
We're not big enough of a country to do something on our own.
But that's almost the case. Well, steel and aluminum, no. We could. It would be a much smaller industry. So it would.
But building and selling cars globally on our own? I don't see that.
Yeah, no, I don't see that. When it comes to steel and aluminum, we could still have an industry.
Sure.
It'd be a smaller industry because
lumber.
Because we roughly push around $5 billion in steel and aluminum to the U.S. and we use about $3 billion ourselves. So we still have an industry there, but it would be smaller and more condensed. And can we find other markets to go into? And I think that's where the Prime Minister is trying to do it. But it's interesting when it comes to CUSMA, and you look at all those things. The quintessential challenge, which we're going to talk about on more shows, is you can change auto, you can change steel, you can change lumber. What's going to happen with energy? Because that's the key one when we get there. Because quite frankly, that's where we hold a little bit of leverage in the conversation.
Well, we have staggering amounts of hydroelectric.
Yep.
Ontario just did a fabulous job refurbishing the Darlington nuclear plant ahead of schedule and under budget.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
For Stephen Lecce and Doug Ford. Yep. So we have tons of energy from nuclear plants, hydroelectric, and we still have all that oil, natural gas on the ground.
Yeah.
So in that way, Canada is poised quite strongly for the future in that sense. I mean, we sell currently hydro to the Northeast U.S. from the big hydroelectric dams in Quebec and Labrador.
Which I'm sure they're more than happy to take tariff-free.
Right.
Right.
Because what else?
But at that
they need it.
I know, but at that point, if he's said no to steel, no to aluminum, he said no to auto, what's the next step? You can go abroad, but at some point, and that's always been that's the elephant in the room that no one wants to address, right? It's always been one of those ones where, remember Doug Ford kind of tiptoed toward, and then they were like, ho, stop. We're not going to talk about that. Alberta, of course, is not happy right now. Mm-hmm. So that's really the elephant in the room in this negotiation. Now, it's interesting because I find Mark Carney right now has said, we're done. So the Prime Minister has said, we're finished, we're ready for negotiation. We're ready for July.
Here's our info. There you go.
Beginning of February. Yeah. Yep. We've done our review. We've got our comments. Yeah. We know where our position are. We're ready to negotiate. When you're ready to negotiate, here we are.
Yeah.
Right? Today, he's on, the press conference on auto. He says, well, if it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, I'm going another path. Like, here's the path that I'm putting in place. So, you know, again, we'd love to deal with U.S. automakers. We'd love to do all that stuff. But if it doesn't happen, because what could happen, Quinn, knows it, in July 1st, we could go to the table and he could come to the table and say, we're terminating.
And I totally agree, Paul. But here's the big issue hanging over all of it. There is so much drama happening in D.C. with Trump, with his health, with the Epstein files, with his cognitive abilities. Who knows what Donald Trump will be talking to Carney in June as opposed to now in early February? Who knows what kind of power he has? Who knows what state he's going to be in? That's the difficult thing for Carney, is dealing with these other presidents and prime ministers. I know when I talk to Prime Minister Micucci in 3 months, he's going to be the same guy I'm talking to right now.
Yeah.
But with Donald Trump, you don't know.
No.
And I think it's difficult for Carney, for CUSMA, for every country in the world right now.
Well, you know, he's kind of laying out the path. And it's interesting today. I thought before the show, we were going into it, we didn't have this on the agenda, but I was like, okay, that's interesting. He's putting his auto plan. So my guess is over the next few months leading up to July 1st, he's just going to lay out a plan for every industry.
Right. I think, hey, if you're going to do it, fine. We want to do business, I'll do business. If you don't, here's what we have.
Yeah, I'm not waiting.
No, that's smart.
No. And listen, I liked it today. I don't know if I agree. We're going to talk about it on another show. I don't know if I agree with everything he's talking about.
But he's not waiting till something happens.
No, I think being proactive. Proactive. Thank you. Being proactive and moving forward and trying to get ready for it is a great idea, and I look forward to seeing it. But Jim, thank you, and
thank you, Paul.
Thank you for the show. And
see, now why can't you negotiate, CUSMA? Something get done.
Well, I'd be playing golf or hanging out.
But then you'd also get a deal done.
Yeah, I would get a deal done, and hopefully, I'd get a tan. So, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Please, we have a new app, so please subscribe,
and subscribe,
and
give us your
get
comments.
the new app. And we look forward to more shows on CUSMA.